Hello everyone, this is the 21st video of my web development practical video series. Today I am going to explain the 21st question of web development question list. So let's go to our question list. Here you can see under A4 is the question number 2. This is also the 21st question, and I'm going to read the question first and answer for that one. But before that, I have to remind you, we are continuing a question we started from the previous one. The question 20 is the previous video. In that video, we talk about the registration part of this web application. Now we have to create the login part. Okay, let's read the question first and then answer for it. Create sign-in page below. Okay, this is a reference image they gave us to follow when we are creating the sign-in form, and in this case you can use HTML, CSS and Bootstrap. In the second part of the question, use the database we used to use in the previous question. Set up a mechanism to log in to the website. In this case, you should validate all fields in the interface. And here are the requirements. If we click the sign in button without entering an email address, then should show a pop-up with an input field and set email button. Use the pop-up. Using the pop-up, we should able to set value to email field. If we click in the sign in button without entering password, then should show a pop-up with an input field and set password button. Using the pop-up, we should able to set value to the password field. If successfully signed in and then redirect to the home page, in home page should show the user's first name. You can see this is another reference text, hi, and we have to show the first name of the user in the home page. Okay, now I'm going to show you my answer or the sign-in page I created. Okay, here we are in the main page. You know, if you watch my previous video, we have to go through this page too, and we created this sign up part. Now I'm going to do the sign in part. Okay, here you can see this is the sign in form I created. Now I'm going to click on the sign in button without entering any details into email and password fields, and let's see what happened. Okay, you can see there's an alert pop up. Please set valid email. Okay, now here is input field to set our email. I'm going to set the email. Now I'm going to use the already logged in users credentials. Here in the database, this is the database we created, and here there are two users we logged in to the system, and I'm going to copy the name and paste that on the place that in the email field and press OK button. Now if I created this website correct, this data will show on the email field. Okay, after that, here you can see I also left the password behind, so we have to set the password too. Let's go back to the database and copy that password. Okay, here's the password, and I'm going to click on the OK button. You can see both email and password automatically set to the sign-in form and already logged into the system, and we can click on the OK button. Okay, now you can see this is the home page. Don't mind the design. In this page we have to show his or her name. You can see hi, this is the name of the user. Now I'm going to go back. Let me clear my cookies you know why I'm clearing these cookies. If you watch my previous videos, we use those cookies to identify a logged in user. So I'm sign out from this. I'm going to sign up from this page, and here when I reload, you can see this page don't allow a user who don't have a logged in credentials. So you are not logged in, and I will be redirected to the login page. Here we are again in the login page. Now I'm going to log in as a different user. Let me copy this one, and here is the password. Now let's sign in again and see whether the name changed. Okay, login success, and here you can see the name changed to Venuta. Okay, again I removed my cookies, and let's review the code again, and that's the whole process of this sign in form. Okay, let's go to the code, and you can see we are in day 5, question number, not day 5, day 4, question number 2. Okay, here we are in the login page. This is the login page. I'm not going to explain the registration parts again, because I already explained those pages, like this one and the registration page in my previous video. So let's talk about the sign-in page. Here we are in the login.php file, and this is the text. You can see the heading sign in, and here are the two input fields, email and password, and they have separate IDs to identify these input fields or these input elements. And here you can see there's an attribute called on clicking, and it have a value sign in. This is a function. You know what will happen when someone click on this button. If we assign on click attribute, when a user click on this sign in button, he'll also triggering this function sign in. Okay, now I'm going to explain what this function do. Let's go to the JavaScript file, and here you can see this is the sign up function. We talked about it in my previous video, and now I'm going to talk about this sign in function. And in the sign in function, here in the first line, you can see there's a if else condition. It will check whether the email field is empty. You can see e field, it's a variable, and here e field is here. You can see that's the variable I use to store the HTML element which I access from the ID I gave it in the login page. And here I have insert or assign that element to this e field, and in this condition it will check the value stored in that e field and check whether that value is empty. And if it's empty, you can see here's another code, and in this one I created another new variable called NE, and I use that variable to store the value which will inserted by the user from the pop-up. You can see prompt means the pop-up, and it will pop up when we didn't enter any data into these fields, and this is the alert which will pop up as the prompt. And when I set any value, that value will be stored in this variable, and after that in the next line you can see eField.value equal NE. So I change the email field's value, which is this email field's value, and I set its value to the value we entered in that prompt. So it will set to this email field. Okay. After that, you can see again I check with another if condition whether the password field is also empty, and if password field is empty, it will again pop up another prompt. You can see please set valid password, and when the user enter that password and press the OK button, the value will be assigned to the password input field's value. Okay, that's how I done this part of the question. Let me show you that part real quickly. Okay, here again in this question you can see if we click the sign in button without entering email address, then should show up a pop-up with an input field and set email button. That's the text, and using that pop-up we should able to set the value to the email field and also the password field. You can see those I created those pop-ups, and after that let's see what happened when the email field is not empty. It will check this one after, and it will again check the password field is empty. If this field is not empty, it will check the password field whether it's empty. If it's empty, it will show again the pop-up to set the password. If none of these conditions are not met, that means email and the password is set by the user, and it will execute these code lines. Here you can see I again stored the email and the password in different variables, so it can be accessed easily, and create the AJAX object. You know why we create AJAX objects? We use them to store data, and we can manipulate all those data by calling this single name form. That's why I created that that form object and stored it in a variable. And here I created the AJAX object. Here you can see in the question we have to store this data in our database. We have to use our database to find the user. So if you want to find the user, we have to send this email and password to a different file and process this data and checking whether this email and password is already existing in our database. So that's why I created this AJAX object. If you use the AJAX method, it will send these details without changing or redirecting user from his current page. That's why I use this AJAX method. If you use the default and conventional method to transfer this data using a form or like that, it will reload the user's page. So it will be very user friendly if you use this AJAX method. That's the purpose I use this one. And let me skip these codes. We are using these codes after we send the request, and we use these code lines to check whether the process is complete, and to check whether the process is complete and the output is came back to the client computer. So I will explain them after I explain the process in the login part. And here again I call the Ajax object and set the open method, and in that method here I define what is the uh, data transferring method I want to use. To transfer this data, I use the post method. You know, post method is a more secure way than the get method. And after that, here is the destination. I want to transfer these details into sign in process.php file, and here is the declaration that I use in the Ajax technology. And after that, here I command the Ajax object to send a request, and with that request it will send the form object and the data we append to that form to this sign in process.php file. Okay, now let's go to our sign in process.php file. Here we are in that file, and you can see I created a session start. If we start a session, that means it will create, or our server will create a space to every single user who's accessing this website, and it will give all the users their unique IDs to access this server-side file, and those IDs will store in their browsers as cookies. Here I showed you when I logged into the website. When I want to sign out from the website, I deleted my cookie. Let me again log in to this system again. Okay. Now let's sign in. Here you can see after that it will store a cookie in my browser called php.sid. That's the ID I called you. This will help to access that server-side file, and we can use this session method to identify a logged-in user by that session. So you can see when I again try to go back and log in as a different user, I still have the cookie and try to log in as a different user, but every time I'm trying to access this file, let me copy the URL and let's again enter this one. You can see every time I logged in as the same user, and when I delete this cookie, let's delete this one, remove, done, and refresh this one, I will redirect it back to the login page. And again in this file, let's reload this page. You can see when my cookie is deleted, I will always redirect it back to the login page. Okay, that's how the sign in part works. Let's go to the code again, and after that here I created the database connection, and in the next line it will check whether there's a name which will come in post method called E, and also whether there's a name called P, and if both these conditions are met, that means there will be a email and password sent to this file. That means in the login page, the user will come through this login page. But if one of these details are missing, that means the user is not come through the login page. He is trying to accessing this file directly, so it will execute this part. You can see there's an error message, you can't access this page directly, and after that I link the JavaScript file, and here I executed another function, go to sign up. Let me explain that go to sign up function. Here you can see there's a function called go to sign up, and by executing this function, it will redirect the user to the sign in page. So every time a user trying to, let's go to the sign in process, trying to access this file without going through the login process, he will be redirected back to the login page or sign in page. And if he's come through the login page, that means both of these conditions will met and these code lines will execute. In the first line, you can see I again created two separate variables and store the email and the password, which will come in post method. And after that, I check that email and password. Here is the validation part of my website. First, it will check the value in that email variable is empty. That means user didn't enter that email, and if it's empty, it will output this error code and left all these codes behind. You can't create an account without an email. Okay. Here you can see that's the error message, and after that, if email is not empty, it will check this one. If you watch my previous video, you know what we why we use this filter function. It will check the validity of the email. When I let's do that again. When I enter an invalid email, this is an invalid email, this is not email, so let's enter a password and press the sign in button. You can see invalid email. That error message will show because of this function. Here, this is the message invalid email address, and after that again the email will be checked. Actually, in this case, it will count the string value or characters in the email field and checking whether it's more than 35 characters. You can see in the database, let me show you the attribute. It's not very suitable to store a character more than 30 email more than 35 characters, because regular email can get up to 20 to 30 characters. So that's why I check the character length in that email, and if it exceeds the character limit 35, it will there will be an error, email must under 35 characters. And that's all the validation I done to the email. And after that, it will check the password. If there's no error, that means none of these conditions are not met, it will check the password. It will check whether the password is empty, and after that it will check the character length. And in the third line, if none of these conditions are not met, it will check the password again for this pattern. There's a pattern. Fragment means the pattern, and it only allow the password to store A to Z characters in uppercase and A to Z characters in lowercase, and also 0 to 9 characters. And after that, these special characters, you can see exclamation mark and at sorry, not this one, at and hashtag, and also the dollar sign and the percentage mark. And after that, you can see 4 and 12 means 4 means the lowest character length which can store in this password field, and 12 is the maximum character length. So the password should be between 4 and 12 characters. If one of these conditions are not met, it will be there will be an error. Password doesn't meet the requirements. And if none of these conditions are not met, that means there's no error. All the details are correct, and it will execute this part of the code. You can see in the first line, I created the select query. It will check the email and password we entered in the database in user table. Here you can see it will check these two attributes to a similar value. And after that, in the next line, I executed that query. When we execute that query, it will check the records, and if there's a record, it will store that record in this variable in table format. You know, the result set always will be recorded in table format. And after that, I check that the number of rows in that the result set, and stored that number in a different variable. And in the next line, you can see there's another if else condition. In the if condition, you can see it will check whether SNOR variable, the value of SNOR variable is equal to 0. Number 1. If it's equal to number 1, that means there's a record. So that means the user is already logged in with our system, and it will execute these 3 code lines. If it's not equal to 1, that means there's no user logged into our system, so he's not a registered user. So it will show this error message, no account found. And if there's an account, it will execute these lines. You can see in the first one, sData equal, here's SRS means the data, the result set in table format, and it will execute fetch assoc function on that using that table result set. I explained this fetch assoc function a lot in my previous video. In a nutshell, it will do. In a nutshell, here's the functionality. It will take the first record out from the result set. If this is the result set, it will take out that record and extract the details in the attributes and stored in a associative array. And you can see I use this variable to store that associative array. So there will be 4 variables in that associative array: email, fname, lname, and password. If this is the user who logged in, his email will be stored in email variable, and name will be stored in name variable. Like that, those 4 variables will be stored in this sData variable as an associative array. And after that, I access the session of the user and created a new variable called user, and I assign the sData. sData means the associative array we stored in this variable, and I reassign that associative array to this session variable. After that, that's the whole process. After that, it will output this value number 1, and it will be sent back to the client computer as the response. So if there's a user and he logged in, the text number 1 will be redirected, sent back to the user computer, and if there's an error in his data, one of these error messages will send back to the user computer. Now let me explain. Let's go to the signing function. Let me explain the code lines I skipped earlier here. In this code line, after the Ajax object made the request, it will check the current state. It will check the check for any state changes of that Ajax object. There are approximately 4 status to a Ajax request. First one is leaving the client side computer to the server side, and second one reaching the server side file, and third one is waiting until the process is complete, and fourth one is returned with the output of that process.php file. So now you can see we need the fourth state, and in the next line it will check whether this the state of this Ajax object is equal to 4. That means it will check whether the outputted data is reached to the client-side computer or returned to the client-side computer. And in the next line you can see if it's the state is number 4 is equal to number 4, it will create a new variable called text and store the response text. Response text means the text which will come in the response as the output of that process.php file, and it will be stored in this variable. And after that, in this if else block, it will check the value recorded inside this variable. It will check whether that value is equal to number 1, and if it's number 1, I told you earlier, the login process is complete. So it will show these two, it will execute these two code lines, and if it's not number 1, that means there's an error. So it will create an alert and show the text which will outputted from that process.php file in that alert as the error message. And if it's equal to 1, that means user is logged in, there will be another alert, and here's the text login successful, and after that this function will be called go to home. Let me explain that one too. Here in the top of this file, here's the function go to home, and as the go to sign in or go to sign up functions, it will redirect the user to the home.php file. That's the go to home function do, and it's the whole process of the login part. Now let me explain the home, what will happen in the home.php file. Here you can see again I started the session. You know why we use the session, I explained it earlier. We use it to identify a logged in user. So you can understand I started this session because I don't want to show this home page to a non-logged in user or unauthenticated user. Here after the session started, every user who will access this home.php file will be checked for the cookie. I showed you that cookie php says id, and try to access his or her session space using that id. If that user don't have an id, it will create an empty space and create a new cookie and store it in that user's browser. And if there's a cookie recorded in that in any user's computer, that cookie will be used to access that user's session. And here in the next line again there's a if else condition, and in that condition you can see it will check whether there's a variable created in the user's session called user. That means only this variable will be created in the login process. So by using this method we can identify a logged in user if we don't have a variable in his session called user. That means he is not logged in and he is trying to access this file directly. So it's not going to show this HTML content. It will go to the else part and execute these code lines only. Here you can see in the else part, I again connected my JavaScript file, and here is an alert, you are not logged in, and after that this function will be called go to sign in. You can see in the JavaScript file, but I actually explain that function, it will redirect the user to the login page. So let's go back to the home page, and if there's a variable called user created in any user's session, that means he is a logged in user, so these code lines will be executed. And you can see in the first line I created a new variable and assigned the value of the user variable in the session to that new variable, and after that these HTML tags will be executed and create the home page design, and will create the home page design. Let's log in as a user and let me explain after that. Let's clear these emails and passwords and enter valid email and password. Okay, here login complete. Here we are in the home page. You can see in the home page, this is a very simple home page. Here this is the welcome text, and after that in this h4 element, here's the text hi, and you can see I started a PHP script and write an echo function to show the first name of the user. You can see this name will dynamically change according to the user who logged in, and I told you earlier, when we store the user's data from this database and run the fetch_assoc function on that result set, it will extract all the details and store in different variable calls email and password. So in this case I use the fname variable to access the user's first name and store that and use that to show that name in the home page. Okay, that's the whole process in this login part and the home page. Let's go to the question again. Here I think I completed all the parts related to this question, and we completed the question 21. I think that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching.